So it's been an interesting week and things are going good here in Watch Complications land. I've been working on the next video in my Making Custom Watches series, and I was looking online for some spacer rings for the ST3600 movement that's in these sort of cheap cases. I'm looking for a cushion ring to sit between the movement and the edge of the case so that when you pull on the stem and are messing with it, or when you're shake your wrist really hard, it doesn't move around or rattle inside the case. And even in the example of a case that's made for this exact size of movement, exact type of movement, and just drop it in, a lot of times the tolerances aren't that tight and you'll still have some movement. But anyway, I was like looking online. There's not a lot out there in terms of things like movement holders, movement rings. I've talked about this before in my sort of project content on making custom watches on the blog. But anyway, I was sitting here like looking online, like, what am I doing? Why don't I just? It's just a ring. It's just a plastic ring. I was like, I got a 3D printer. I'll just draw it up and print it. So that's going on now. But now for something entirely different. This is going to be a new set of videos. I discovered playlists in YouTube. I don't know what planet I was on. I'm still new to this sort of content creation thing and sharing public playlists and all that. Anyway, I'm figuring it all out. Now you might notice that there are playlists on the channel that you can easily go through and watch the different series that I'm doing, and you can watch videos one after another to make your lives easier. So I figured that out. So yeah, this is a new multi-part series that I'm calling Brian and the Grail. As a disclaimer, this first video is about 10 minutes and it's primarily me talking. I do give a couple of sneak peeks at one of the contenders for being my cheap stand-in watch, but if you don't want me talking for 10 minutes and the context and background of this story, then feel free to skip to other videos in the series. It sounds very Monty Python-ish. You got the Life of Brian, Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Brian and the Grail. This is just a cup of coffee. So this will be a multi-part series on me acquiring my Grail watch. There will be an explanation about the logic behind my save, what watch I'm after, the price range, all that sort of information. So that'll be first. Then I'll walk you through my online search for a cheapo stand-in. And so you'll see a in-detailed comparison review of those two watches. There will be a macro comparison, a great up-close video that you can take a real close look at the watches with me. I'll get into cautionary tales about these, cheap, manufactured watches and brands, things to watch for in terms of everything from the online advertising to what you actually get, the quality of the machining. So lots of different great little details I'll discuss throughout the length of this series. And then as I go through this long process of a long-term save and waiting to get to that point where I can have my watch. Over the years as I'm doing my save, years, I'll check in from time to time, let you know how the weight is going, how the cheapo stand-in is holding up, that sort of thing. But I'll be able to expand on this series over this long period of time, in which I'm working toward acquiring my Grail. Well, let's get started. First, the explanation of what in the world I'm up to. Did I mention I have the playlist set up now so you can save them? Also, subscribe and ring the bell if you want updates. This is the Binger 8606XA, and let me give you a good view of it there. So I want to explain why I have this watch. Let's say you have a standard watch or two and you've decided you want to save up for a particular watch, a Grail watch, right? Something that's at a high price point, a very high price point. And there are basically three approaches to doing that. So cue the approaches. Approach number one, you just say, this is the watch I want to save for. You set aside the money, however long that takes, you save for the watch, and you buy it when you've got the money. Approach number two is the one I hear most from other enthusiasts and collectors, and that is, or for those that have a collection already, is to sell off some or all of their current collection and then take that money and perhaps save a little bit more and then put that toward the Grail watch. Now, of course, all of this is dependent on your financial situation and such factors, but being a watch enthusiast and collector is a dangerous proposition in the sense that new watches are coming out all the time. A vintage watch might come up for sale that grabs your attention, but distractions abound that can take your eye off the ball and eat at your savings fund for that Grail, whether that's new shiny stuff or old patinaed stuff, and it makes it hard to reach that Grail. Hence the approach I took over this past year, to set up my long-term save. So approach number 3, I like watches. I need a certain amount of variety and change, so just 1 or 2 watches wouldn't cut it for me, at least not at this point in my life. That might change, I don't know, but anyway, but the watch I want, my Grail, the price point is in the $50,000 to $60,000 range. Now, that's a high price point for about anybody, but especially me, and that means what I expect to be about a 6 to 8 year save. Now, 6 to 8 years is a long time for a watch nut not to buy anything or to be distracted by something. And so what do I do if I want to reach such a Grail? So I spent about a year, maybe a little bit more, building the variety I wanted into my collection of about 20 meaningful pieces, meaningful to me, plus a few of my own builds, so that I won't be distracted by watches during my save. Now, for my collection, I'm not counting like low-cost watches, like $20 give or take, that are nostalgic for fun, for tinkering, chores, that sort of stuff. But anyway, my small to mid-sized collection will last, and it has a little bit of everything in it for any occasion. And I only bought watches that I really wanted and expected to stay and that would get worn fairly regularly. So sure, I've sold a couple that didn't click or that I really got for review purposes and whatnot, but I typically only buy a watch if I'm sure that I want it long term. I purposely set myself in a state where new releases or things that come about aren't as tempting because I probably already have something that fills that spot in the box. And maybe I'd swap it with something, but no expansions to the collection. Now, it's not going to be like I don't get to interact with any new watches. I still have those coming in for review. I have those that I've already previously set aside money for, that when they went up for sale or come up for sale, I can purchase those. But this means no new watches that I hadn't considered before, that sort of thing. And I've noticed over the years I built a variety into my collection that the temptation to buy is significantly decreased. Let me give you an example. I have a regulator in my collection, and you've seen this perhaps in one of my earlier review videos. But if a different regulator comes along, then either I'm not interested because I already have a regulator, but if I think I would perhaps like it more, then I could consider a direct exchange. But either way, the collection doesn't expand and I'm not out a bunch of money should I decide to exchange them. So I set up a bank account, deposited the first chunk of money, and it'll be a long wait, but no worries. I have a watch that'll suit tomorrow. Well, what does any of this have to do with the Binger watch, which I showed you at the beginning of the video? And here it is again, just for, again, a visual check. Well, for fun, as I started this journey toward my Grail, which, as I said, is in the $50,000 to $60,000 price range, the watch I'm after is an Armin Strom mirrored force resonance water. For some reason, that is just a watch that speaks to me. I really want one. I'm going to save for it. But for fun, as I'm doing this journey, I wanted to find, or tried to find, something that was had some visual similarities to my Grail that wasn't a high-cost watch. And so after a lot of looking around online, of course, I'm looking for visual similarities with the color palette, with as much movement on the dial face, since there are 2 different flywheels on this watch and 2 different escapements on the mirror force resonance as well. But I wanted something that would sort of give some similar visual cues. Now, these 2 watches are at opposite ends of the quality spectrum, just utterly opposite ends. And anyone who's into watches, or you read a little bit, will know that. So this was my last purchase, a fun little test, a cheapo stand-in for my Grail. And yeah, of course I wasn't going to find anything that closely or exactly really resembled the Armin Strom mirrored force resonance, but it was the closest I could find for under $100. Well, that's the explanation for Brian and the Grail. In the next video, I'll walk you through my online search for my cheapo stand-ins. Until the next video, subscribe if you haven't, ring the bell if you want updates, check out the page watchcomplications.com, and I will see you in the next segment.